call it Reimagine the Bradford House, to really consider what we want our historic house museum to be in the 21st century and what the best story that we can tell is. And we've decided to move our interpretation to the mid-1860s because the best story that we can tell is that of the four Bradford daughters. Well, the new exhibition is a self-guided exhibition in the family home. So we are telling the story of their lives from their young adulthood, from their childhood and young adulthood, all the way through to their deaths, trying to give you a full three-dimensional picture of what these women were and the types of things that they were involved in. And they were involved in everything, all of the major social movements of the 19th century, from abolitionism to temperance to vegetarianism and alternative medicines. Well, it's an interesting question, why did they stand out? I like to say that they were both extraordinary and yet ordinary. Their lives were somewhat typical for a middle-class woman in New England, and yet within the ordinary experiences they found some really incredible things to be involved with as well. For instance, Charlotte Bradford's Civil War career is absolutely unique to the American experience. There's no other woman during the Civil War who served the U.S. military and the U.S. Sanitary Commission in the same way that Charlotte did. Well, Lucia was also a Civil War nurse. She joined her sister Charlotte in Washington, D.C. at the U.S. Sanitary Commission because her sister was the matron there and was terribly overworked. And Lucia, something that actually repeated itself over and over again in the sisters' lives, Lucia helped her sister. She traveled across the country to help her sister. And it's very much exemplary of how close these women really were with each other throughout their entire lives. Avid artists. They were involved in botany, which is a very interesting thing. In some ways it was very ordinary for a lot of women to be involved with botany, but if you look at it within a larger context, botany was important because it allowed the average ordinary woman to be involved with something that's scientific and artistic and intellectual as well. So it was an accepted activity within the confines of middle-class America at the time. This book here is a biography called Worthy Women of Our First Century, and it was published in 1877 in Philadelphia. It features a chapter on Sarah Alden Bradford Ripley, who was the first cousin of the Bradfords. Her father, Gamaliel, built the house right across the street from our historic house museum, and she was a renowned academic and intellectual in her own day. Ripley, of course, being the maternal line of the Emerson family. She was the aunt of Ralph Waldo Emerson. And she was known by Emerson, she was known by Thoreau, and they in their lifetimes commented on her intellectual prowess. And she's actually documented in her lifetime as sort of lamenting the difficulty in being both an intellectual and a woman and a mother and a wife, and how difficult doing all of those things was. So we can only imagine, being the first cousin and being a very close correspondent of our Bradford women, that they too were aware of her opinions on those matters.